Hello to everyone watching this live or trying to catch up uh, on a recorded session. I know this is the last session, so we'll try to keep it a bit interesting. And while we'll take a lot of questions on how to improve the performance, how to make your websites faster, there are a little bit of alternate questions of what exactly performance means to different people, or what kind of performance measurement is there in different kind of apps. So, without delaying this further, let's add the panelists. First up is Ankeet. Can we add Ankeet? Ankeet has recently transitioned to a tech lead role at Flipkart. Hello, Ankeet. Okay,
Hello,
next is
everybody. How are you doing?
Pavithra. Hey, can we add Pavithra? Hi,
Hello.
Pavithra. For everyone who's watching, Pavithra is a front-end engineer at Atlassian and is writing code which a lot of us are using in everyday life, whether developers or not. Okay, um, then comes Rahul. Can we add Rahul?
Hello.
Rahul is a senior software developer at Swiggy and is taking care of consumer side products and a lot of Swiggy goodness that we every day interact with. Hello to all of you.
Hey.
Hey, so we have a lot of interesting questions for you guys, and like we have been talking to
And hot
people,
takes.
taking yes, and hot takes, yes. We have gathered these questions from Twitter and other sources, but yeah. So actually, I know Pavitra is going to give a talk tomorrow at on new age bundlers, like I guess White or Snowpack, right? So our first question is actually related to it. So for a very long time, we all have been using Webpack, Rollup, and recently Parcel as well. But very recently, a lot of new age bundlers have entered the scenario. We have seen Wheat, we have seen Snowpack, and we have seen ES And I know that a few of you guys have been directly working with them or trying to have work with them and make get more and more insights for us. So starting with you, Pavitra, like what do you think, how do they scale up against Webpack or Rollup? Do they build really small websites, or are they really fast in comparison to these bundlers?
So, yeah, so giving my thoughts around this is basically the new age bundlers uh, are not aiming to replace your production build. They are aiming to make developer experience much better by making it much faster and leveraging ES modules. So, for those who don't know, ES modules came in ECMA's script 2016, I think, and what happened there was now JavaScript finally has module system, which it didn't have for 20 years, right? And the innovation that's come out of it is to have files loading on your developer instance, uh, single files loading through ESM, and not your whole bundled files. So for anyone who's been using Webpack or Rollup for some time now, or on reasonably large applications, they are dev must be suffering, right? At least I'm facing that issue, that dev is really slow, and it does not need to be. So that's what. So all the new age bundlers are just built on top of ES build. So was the first innovation in this area, and it combined two things: using ESM, having a lot of constraints in what it builds, what it does not build, and what plugins it accepts and whatnot, and using a language other than JavaScript for building itself. It's written in a language, it's written in Go and not in JavaScript like we are used to in most tools. This comes up with a lot of trade-offs, but the speed gain that it gives is so amazing that yeah, a lot of other people have jumped on top of it. So what Wheat and Snowpack are doing is almost identical. There's small differences, but what they're doing is they're leveraging ES build for all your developer experience, and then leveraging a roll up for production bundling. Very soon you might see like Webpack support also might come in. So we can't send hundreds of files to our users through ESM, of course. So we need to send them bundle stuff. So that will remain for quite some time. Uh, but yeah, what they're aiming at is improving developer experience by making things super fast.
Right, that's a very clear,
But
crisp
but
explanation.
I have a question for Pavitra, then counter question. So I understand that these make it really fast, but don't you think that having a difference in dev setup and production setup could lead to a lot of bugs? Like it works on my system, but it doesn't, and I'm not sure how the interop story is because there are a lot of modules that are published as CommonJS, and the interop story within CommonJS and ES modules is so difficult that if you see a lot of stuff relies on underscore underscore ES modules flag, and so that I want to know ki how good is that support?
Yeah, so that is one of the primary challenges of Snowpack. Yes, ES Build does not care about that, but Snowpack, what it does mainly is convert all your ES modules from from your Node modules, all your CJS files from Node modules, and make them into ES modules. And there's a podcast that the creator of Snowpack did, where he explained all of the challenges that he faced. But mainly, yes, the problem is that what we have done up until now is we have browserified Node code. But with ES modules coming up, we are now trying to like only support ES modules, while it is completely different from how CommonJS behaves. Yes, that is one of the primary challenges. About the dev setup being different from prod setup, well, it is kind of different even with Webpack. At least that's my experience right now. My experience right now is that even though I use Webpack for both dev and prod, my dev Webpack is completely different. There's a lot of things that I don't do in my dev Webpack, some chunking, some minification, some source maps, so many things that I don't do, and we are still managing. I think that should be managed at like your canary or those levels with your integration tests and stuff. Yeah, I don't think it's that strong of a yeah problem that your dev and your prod are different. It already kind of is, in my experience at
No,
least.
I'm just saying because we were bitten by this bug recently only, where some of the code that was working on local or using these tools did not bundle up correctly, and we were targeting some newer browsers, and in the older browser we forgot to include some polyfill which did not show up in the newer current browsers, and the system was kaput. So we were trying to think like how can we solve for that, and then we found out okay,
Okay.
okay, let's stick to one thing. And I think that was the earlier reasons when this HMR came into picture, that people did not want to use this because the way HMR worked previously, I think 2016-17 was different when your app was bundled, because it was changing hot reloading your state, and also it was difficult to debug state problems locally than and in the production server. I remember that stuff too. So yeah,
Yeah,
that was what
definitely.
is
But
keeping me
I think
from jumping onto that
we
train.
Yeah, I think Wheat's main selling point is that it'll make sure that whatever runs on your developer runs on its production build also. I mean, it'll always make sure that if it's running on your developer instance, the production build also will be clean. At least that's their one of their selling points. That's how.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess we'll not take any more spoilers from your talk, Pavitra. Actually, I have a follow-up question for all of you. Like as Pavitra mentioned, that these bundlers are not written in JavaScript. I have previously contributed to um I've previously contributed to a few of these bundlers, and the main reason for the ease of that contribution was because they were written in the language that I was using at my job. Now, since this ease barrier is changing, what do you guys think? Like, will the open source community still be so iterative on this, or will there be a higher cost to enter the contribution graph of these projects? Rahul, Ankeet, Pavithra, any views?
No, I kind of get where you're coming from because I've also contributed to Rollup, and it was way significantly easier for me to do than to do in ES Build, which is written in Go, which I have clearly very little idea. But then there are so if you use just one language, right, then there are so many features that you don't even think. So in JavaScript, we since we are used to event-driven single-threaded model, we don't know how concurrency actually works, right, which is one of the basic tenets in backend development. So any backend engineer would know how concurrency works, how to take thread logs, what semaphore is, right? So I was thinking that it is not a bad idea to maybe learn that and add that skill to your portfolio, that you do this, because patterns are mostly common at these places, just one or two things. So
Yeah,
that's what I
I
think.
That's a
I
great
mean,
point.
it's good that different languages are coming up. Uh, I mean, there's
uh,
more to learn now.
want to add one more thing on top of it. While ES build is written in Go, there are other plugins that are still written in JavaScript. So you can still go ahead and create your own plugin, contribute to them. So still open source community is not disturbed around that. Yes, the main part is in these build, that is in Go. Yeah, that might OS uh, community will be hampered around that. Yes.
That's a
I
great
feel like
point.
JavaScript is a more difficult language than Go to learn, to be honest. It might be, and also like community engagement graph, if you see on who commits and stuff, you will see that only one or two people really make like huge contributions to open source libraries. I don't know how this will pan out, but I think like ES Build will remain as a core and under the uh, maintainer's care. He's a founder of Figma, I think. Yeah, and
Okay.
he's written a lot of documentation, which could help like contributors if they're really motivated.
I
All right.
totally agree with you on the open source being written by a very few people. You should look at the issues. This is not working for me. Please fix it. So I think there is a greater need for people to be responsible and come up. Because if you see, I was just checking ES builds. So if you have made only 5 or 6 commits, then you will be under top 10 developers who contributed. So yeah. And on the same note, I'm also looking for maintainers for my open source project Infinite React Scroll component. So please come on and triage the issues and help me.
There you
Shameless
go,
plug.
people. Plugs and opportunities for
Shameless
everyone who's.
plugger.
But this is an opportunity for people who are trying to get into open source. All right, moving on. This was about DX. Yeah, developer experience. Moving on, we have a question from one of the people who submitted. This is, if you have to choose only one technique to improve performance, what would that be? Starting with you, Rahul.
If I had to choose one, that would be preloading with being mindful about HTTP caching. Uh, in my opinion, preloading is the best thing that has happened with browsers. So yeah, if only one thing, preloading. Other than if you have more things to do, try to add pre-caching as well. Pre-cache all of your assets as early as you can.
And when you say pre-cache, are you saying like deploying techniques using service workers and
Yes,
other stuff?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Mainly using service workers. Yes.
Okay. What about you, Ankit?
Okay, I heard this word service worker, but I'm not sure whether I'll ever know service workers enough to be so much confident that I don't bork it at all. So if you're using service workers just for your static assets, do not use service workers. I mean, service workers are way too powerful. I will tell you what it can do in just a bit if I get time. But if you are looking for static assets, you should cache control headers is your friend. I've been using this since 2015. If you have static URLs like CSS and your JS assets, fingerprint them, keep a good hash, and never I mean, make the public max age to unlimited time, like 1 year, so that they never expire. So that the request from browser never asks the server whether this is old or not. So you save one of that round trip, and if you have 5, 6 assets, that saves you 6 to 12 round trips. And I think everybody knows this, but I still get very excited talking about cache control public headers. But make sure that you don't enable that on dev, otherwise your local dev package will never get updated and you won't see your updated code.
Well, some of us have definitely wasted hours there, but yeah, moving to Pavitra.
Uh, yeah, for me, at least from my experience, is to focus on the critical path of any experience, be it your first load, be it any particular interaction. To focus on that whole path is has been very beneficial. The amount of like crap that we, so the excess data and excess code that we put into that critical path is one of the biggest culprits. Like if you go and make it as lean as possible, only load whatever you need, make that bundle smaller. Even uh, it's not completely dependent on bundle size also. It is the amount of code that you have your browser has to run to get to that experience being good for your user. uh, yeah, having second, third, fourth looks at that uh, can give you a lot of benefit in my experience.
Yeah, like the cost of transaction, like every
Prateek,
click and every. Right. Ankit, you were saying something?
okay. Yeah, I was saying before you move on to the next question, I wanted to ask in this caching, right? I want to know like when can we have domain, like, so let's say you download React on one of your apps, abc.com. If I'm using the same CDN URL, can I use the same? Can that be cached from def.com? Like across domain, when can
Yes.
we? Since you work in Google, you should be able to tell us this answer because I don't know.
Uh, right. I can tell you that there are discussions. So for a very long time, we all have used jQuery in this way, where we use jQuery from one CDN, and all the websites that used the same URL just basically got it for free. That it was downloaded and used from the client's browser itself. The problem where what caused this to not work anymore was double key caching. When you are able to share a single resource, you are able to that shared URL was able to get information from other domains. That's why double key caching was introduced in all the browsers, and if I'm not wrong, it's already working for Safari, for Chrome, and all the major browsers. However, the need of this was very clear, and there is a proposal which is already being worked. I have completely forgot the name of the proposal, but yes, like there's a discussion going on how we can enable this again for React. I can probably dig up the link and try to see if I can find more information on this. But yeah, like for all these queries, I probably just go and tag Google Chrome devs. They have way more latest info than a single person could ever comprehend. Okay. It seems like we have lost Ankit's video. Ankit, are you at least on audio? Nope. Let's hope we get Ankit back. Uh, yeah, but till then, we can at least start with the next question. My next question is actually for Rahul. Rahul, I know you work with a consumer platform
Yes.
product, right, at Swiggy, and
Hmm.
a recent set of metrics known as Core Web Vitals was recently introduced, right? I was wondering if you guys use Core Web Vitals to track these metrics, or like how do you track these numbers? How do you track these three core metrics that was introduced, if at all you use them? Otherwise,
Yeah.
we need to
We actually
find
have
another one.
started using this recently when Google console, Search Console added into the reporting, and mainly we are using because Google is going to add into the SEO ranking. That's the main reason that we'll be now. uh, keep tracking about our core web vitals numbers. Yes. So yeah, we have alerting and all of those mechanisms with us right now.
So the question that I would want to ask you is like, how do you track these numbers? Do you use a library? Do you use the library given by the Google Chrome Dev org on GitHub? Do you use a tool which already does this for you? I
So
know Next.js also has this thing where it can automatically track this for you.
yeah, we're not using Next.js, so won't comment on that part. But yeah, for as Swiggy's purpose, we are using mainly two tools. One is SpeedCurve. It has already started reporting core web vitals, and you can add alerts on top of it. And we are using Google Search Console. So yeah, these two tools we are using it in our weekly scrums. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's
Okay,
yeah, that's
Prateek,
interesting.
I heard you saying about Next.js, and since I know for a fact that you have contributed a great deal there, could you shed some light? Question to the moderator.
Sure. That's actually one of the most interesting things, and that was tracking core web vitals with Next.js was one of the first contributions that I did to Next.js. So that is really close and dear to my heart. But the thing is, they basically have an API there where you, in the main app.js file, you export just a function with a particular name to it. The name is a reserved name. So you just declare a function, and what Next.js does is it basically feeds those values to that function. Now, when you get the core web vitals name of the metric and the value of the metric, and then it's up to the user. They can send it to their Google Analytics, they can send it to their ingestion pipeline, they can send, basically it's a backend agnostic implementation, and the developer can basically send it wherever they want and do all kind of analytics to it.
Cool. I think I'll make a mental note to look at the implementation and add it to my app, and then
Cool.
define that as a KRA on my next performance review.
Sure. Okay, cool. Core Web Vitals have been a great contribution to the loading metrics, and they have benefited a lot to the consumer side apps. I wanted to know, like, what kind of performance analysis do teams do who are working on long running apps. So not all apps are transactional. For example, e-commerce apps, you go, you find, you add it to the cart and you get away from it, versus other kind of apps are basically looking at dashboards. These apps are open for a very long time on your browsers. So Core Web Vitals might not suffice all the needs here. Wondering if you guys have any insights on how do what kind of perf analysis do you do for these kind of apps beyond load metrics? How fast my load page loaded?
So we once had a 20% time project where a bunch of us like sat together and looked at our DOM size and looked at like how many HTML nodes we had. It was quite a lot. Uh, and we tried to reduce it uh, without causing regression. So that was one effort at least. But I don't know of any industry tools that actually help you with memory analysis over a long time. Definitely over. So I work on Jira. So for a long time now, we've been focusing on the first load and interaction performance, but we have realized that uh, we do consume a lot of memory and RAM when it is in different browsers. So this is still very nascent for us, but yeah, that is the next thing that our teams are looking to focus on based on performance, because it is a long running app. People keep it open all the time, and they want to share it, especially on they keep it open on like we used to have it open on large TVs and stuff. uh, yeah, definitely something that I'd like to learn about.
Okay, cool. Actually, so I have a follow-up question here, and also a comment from one of the viewers. The direct question is actually, is Redux slow for huge application? But let me like just rephrase this. Like when you have a centralized data store to which everything is to which literally everything is going, and the app is running for 30, 40, or even like 30, 40 minutes or multiple hours. Do you think this could grow to a size where memory becomes an issue? Or have any one of you ever ran into such memory issues?
I can kind of talk about it because we moved away from Redux to using more granular stores. But there is a risk with these also. What I have found that while it is much better developer experience wise, we can have a lot of these stores around in our app, like floating around in our app, and it's now after like a year or two, no, year and a half of usage of outside of Redux, at least in Redux you know that this is the only store that can remain, right? But outside, when we are using these granular stores, they have kind of exploded, and I don't know if it is more memory efficient than using Redux from that, only from that angle. But in all other ways it is much better than Redux. Like you can code split better, you can yeah, you can understand your app better, you can share state better. But memory and performance wise, memory wise at least, I don't know if it is an advantage, because
Okay,
you
do
are
you have?
storing the same amount of data, right?
Sure.
Uh,
Sorry
that's
to
what I
cut you
was
in.
about to say. That am I audible?
Yep.
Okay, so full confession, I am a Redux fan here. So I don't think if you have a single store, it is the evil. And probably what I'm thinking is that the subscriptions that you are taking out of that Redux store, maybe that's not correct. That your every component is re-rendering whenever any slice of that Redux is changing, and maybe then your nodes are not getting garbage collected because you are keep on having those older nodes. So that might increase your HTML nodes and memory. Because let's say to dumb it down, if you have the same data, right? So whether you keep that, let's say you are measuring the data size in kgs, so if you have 5 kg data, and whether you have one store of 5 kg or 5 stores of 1 kg, it still remains the same. So most probably it is about your memory leaks in the app. You should do a heap analysis, and when you find out how to do memory leaks, how do you determine memory leaks which is causing, you tell me also, because that's something that I'm not very good at. I've tried multiple times, so it's difficult to find memory leaks in your app. uh, but I think if you write unit test, React testing library would show you that you might probably have a leak here because you are missing a subscription, you have used something on use effect, you have not cancelled it, and so on and so forth. So Redux is awesome, at least I feel that.
Okay. Cool. Good points and notes from there. My next question is a bit is not directly related to code, but how do you talk to leadership? So we know, like, having worked on e-commerce and a few other um, consumer-facing apps, you know that there's competition. People are jumping from your product to any other website or any other apps. So you know that you have to be on top of your performance analysis and performance numbers. But what do you do if you are an enterprise solution? What do you do if you are like a B2B app, like where, for example, let's say Jira, or even say, I've with Google, I've worked with the Google admin, or sorry, the Google console for enterprise. So like
Cloud console.
when, right. So users have already bought into these products, and they have nowhere to go. So how do you convince your leadership that performance is still necessary while your users are not showing obvious signs of leaving the product? But performance is still necessary for these. As developers, we understand this, but how do you guys communicate to your leadership, or how do you guys help your teams understand that performance is still a necessary pillar for building these kind of web apps. Any takers?
I can go.
Sure.
So, like Prateek said, right, that these are enterprise applications, and I'll go one level deeper. So, enterprise applications, like Prateek said, if you've bought in, you have that subscription for, let's say, in a year, right? After that, you still will leave. But consider the case where I'm taking Rahul's example, Swiggy or Flipkart, right? You have so many delivery hubs, you have warehouses, and there are some applications that are needed there for your food to be picked up or for your stuff to move around, right? And then these are employees that are hired by these organizations, so then they are logged in for their tenure, right? As long as they are in that company, they have no choice but to use that tools. So then that could make the developers or the engineers very reliant. Okay, we control the audience, we control the browsers, we control the devices. But there is one simple example. What happened was, there was some code that we pushed out and it caused huge lags, right? So it is the example is of Shimla. There was a loading unit, a docking unit, a hub where trucks were coming in to unload the items. And since there was a lag, the queue started building up, and then there was a traffic jam at highway for quite some time just because of slowness in the application, that we were not able to unload stuff properly. So I think it's very important for engineers of every application to take performance as a feature. And yeah, I can't stress that enough, because these are tracked, and have little empathy for the users, because the people who are using your app might not be that tech savvy. So for him to know that pull down is refresh and all that, I mean, uh, take into account these small little things, and make your app refresh proof, please. If you control the audience, and if you have so much power of your over your audience, make it refresh proof, and he should land where he was, even if the device crashes or he refreshes. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's true story. I'm not fabricating.
That's a really nice story, and yeah, like productivity still gets hampered, no matter
Right,
if you are
productivity is
working
the
on
word.
it. Cool. Pavitra, you were saying.
Yeah, so for a long time, for us, we have known that performance is really important and our users really want it. But there was, I think, for a long time, a misconception that if you have great developers, performance will come as a byproduct of your development. But what I've found is that is not the case. So that is what you need to convince leadership of. Not that everyone knows performance is important. They use it if they use it every day and it's slow, like if your stand up is slow, then people get pissed. And but what to do about it is what you have to convince leadership. So in our case, at least, we were able to convince that performance has to be OKR for the team. Otherwise, it will not get done. It will always be sidelined, because performance is not just when you work on the app. Performance is measuring. Performance is testing before you send it to production. And performance, even though the whole industry is all gung ho about performance, the tools are really lacking, if you ask me. Like when you merge code, can you tell that whether that code will regress performance or not? I don't think there is any definitive way of saying that until now. Only real user monitoring kind of tells you if there is a regression for your users. It depends on what data is being used, what configuration the user has, and stuff also, right? So convincing leadership that it needs to be its own feature, like Ankit said, that performance has to be a feature, that a significant amount of talent has to go into looking at performance alone, at least for some time, before the culture gets embedded in the org. That is, I think, what people find hard. It's if you leave performance to individual developers, or anything for that matter, if you ask me, like testing or any typing, whatever, right? The developer will focus on delivery and not yeah it's like, with your time, what will you do, right? So performance has to be a priority for the development team. Preferably, if you have the budget, its own track, or at least if you don't have, you need to have performance sprints and stuff to continuously improve performance. I feel unless you focus specifically on it, it's not going to improve itself.
Cool.
True.
Awesome. So while we are talking about convincing leadership and talking about performance, has this ever happened to you that you went in and over optimized something or eagerly or optimized your performance, which has actually hurt you back? Well, do you have any insights for the developers here?
Yeah, I can pitch in. That happened with us quite recently uh, with our product Swiggy Super, which got revamped few weeks back. We have a preconceived notion that SSR will solve all our problems. SSR will result in fast print times and things like that. But it ended up having a flash of white screen. Why? Because one of the downstream APIs took approximately 1 second, which led to a lot of like quite some time around white screen. Uh, Plus, we ended up doing a lot of preloads of our fonts, of our images, which were not required at that moment. So yeah, those were the over optimization theories that we had.
What kind of advice do you have for watching these kind of over optimizations? Does someone really should wait until they run into it, or are there like bare minimums that one should do and just stick to it?
So I would say ship it. Let's ship it first. If you don't have involve like try to convince your management or your team to have a canary deployment setup where you can at least deploy to certain set of users, maybe it an internal organization or to a certain set of public user, and start monitoring on top of it. While these are new features, you can set your budget on top of it and keep optimizing over on it. Like instead of okay, we'll do everything on day one. So mainly two reasons, two things. Have a canary deployment at your place. Try to ship it as early as possible.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
my advice would be don't optimize without measuring. Unless you know it is really slow, what is really slow, there's no need for optimization until then.
I was
Sure.
bitten even after knowing that it is faulty. So I was writing, so I was writing some tests, and then I saw that some. I told you right, React testing library would give you that these components are still doing something after the tests have ended. That means that there's some leak. So I found out that some component was setting state even after it was unmounting. So I went ahead and I added a check called if it is not mounted, don't call this. What happened was that the condition that I put in removed some loaders from being hidden. So loaders were shown, and then when the app went into production, some users were seeing like loaders, fake loaders onto it, and they were trying to fix which API is slow, where is the issue. But then, since I was the culprit, I knew what the problem was and presented an RC. So yeah, it's both ways.
Sure. RCAs about over optimizations are one of the most interesting ones. Okay, cool. I see we don't have a lot of time on our hand. We have this one question from our Slido that what would be the things to do in CRA to optimize perf, assuming you can't switch to Next or Gatsby?
Eject.
Okay.
Like even if you
No,
Is
eject,
is
I
what
was
will you
just
do
CRA
after
kidding.
slow?
that?
I have no, this was not a real answer. I was just kidding.
Uh, I would take this. So if you can't switch to Next.js, maybe you can take an inspiration of what these guys are doing, what Next.js is doing, what Gatsby is doing, what all things they are doing. Things like preloading, what which is what their image lazy loading, code splitting, things like that. You can take an inspiration from them and start building into your CRA app.
Okay. Now you're cutting out a little bit.
Am I
Uh,
audible?
yes, better now.
What was the last thing that you heard?
Yeah, we heard that let's take inspiration from Next.js if you cannot. eject. Sorry, if you cannot just switch to Next or Gatsby.
Yeah. So I was talking about take inspiration from them, look at what things they're doing, preloading, uh, asset caching, then image lazy loading, code splitting. You can all do all of those things in CRA, one way or another.
So code splitting is one thing, but then loading of those chunks is another. I think everybody uses React.lazy and suspense, but then if you render that directly in your render without any condition, then it loads eagerly. So even if you've splitted that chunk up, so you should make sure that you load it only when it is required, maybe on click of a button or something route transition. So using just React.lazy does not fix all of your problems. So yeah.
Okay, great point. Yeah, actually, I can myself add a point here just to start off. If you are starting off a new project or anything, there is this one collaboration that we did with the React team. I'm not super sure whose idea was it, but the React docs or the Create React App docs now clearly say that Create React App is not for highly scaled productionized app. Create React App was a project that started to make it easy for everyone to get started on React. You don't have to deal with Webpack. You don't have to deal with any other boilerplate or any other setup code. You can just get your hands dirty with React. Of late, we have seen people taking this and deploying it for their production apps. There are a bunch of primitives that are missing there. For example, as we discussed, like out of the box code splitting, then lazy loading, what kind of loading sequence should be there. So, if at all you are starting with a production app, I highly, highly recommend that you should either get started with Next or Gatsby, both these tools, or any other React starter tool built for production apps. All these frameworks have a baseline KRA that it should be easy for developers to get started. And if that's not the case, they should know about it. But till the time you are trying to play with React, get your hands dirty with React, it's all good. But do not build your scaled productionized app with Create React app.
Or any boilerplate for that matter.
Yeah,
Or
write
if
your
you're not
boilerplate
looking
code.
for web
Yes.
performance.
Yes.
All right.
True.
This would be the last question. We have 2 minutes left. So once, if your team has fixed the performance problems in hand, how do you basically get them to own the performance culture, or how do you get that performance culture set in your organization? I've seen cases in places that I've worked, in teams that I've worked. Once the most biggest perf problems are solved, everyone is back to square one, not bothering about it, being complacent about performance. Like, so how can someone or a team make sure that performance is deep rooted in their organization, or at least in their org of the company, so that these things don't come up again and again? Any views on that?
Yeah, definitely. Like spreading performance culture is really hard. It took like our team at least 1 year, uh, uh, after which like even leadership understood what exactly TTI or FMP and all of those things meant, and they were using it in their updates and stuff. So that was a really proud moment for us. But again, yeah, you need like great measurement, and we have an org level now dashboard that tracks major experiences and loading times. So even like a 30-40 millisecond drop in that is noticeable to everybody. We have still not added those alerts for our on call. We are almost there, but it feels a little harsh. We are focusing on finding these things out in pre-production, as not in production. But yeah, at least we have been treating performance regressions as production bugs. So we treat it as Sev 3 hot, and kind of work on it that way. So that way you can get more people to focus on it, and people will be motivated not to have a hot performance hot in this thing. At least these are some techniques that we are using. Make it a production bug, and you'll get more people to care about it, is what we've seen.
I really need to ask this. If Jira's production performance goes down, is there a Jira bug automatically, a Jira ticket automatically created
Yeah,
for it?
yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
On
yeah,
point.
yeah.
That would
Landing on
be
point.
epic.
Ops Genie call, and a Jira ticket is created.
Okay.
And
That's
a
branding
Slack
on
room
point.
gets created, and
One
people
more point.
get called.
Yes, Ankeet.
One more point to what Pavitra said. So Pavitra talked about measuring these parameters: TTI, time to interactive, time to first paint. Right? I feel that these are just the tip of the iceberg, right? But let's say once you go onto the client side of the page, let's say you're shopping on Flipkart, you enter, you want to filter by brands, you want to buy shoes, right? And then there's a big brand filter, and there's so many brands. On typing of that, right? If you do not get that response within 100 milliseconds, right? If the UI does not feel snappy, that I'm not sure how to single out those performance issues unless until you are doing manual testing. So they don't get caught up. I'm not sure when should an engineer go to his dev tools and profile that app. Maybe E2E integration tests would increase time, but if you are adding integration tests daily, then that time also gets increased. So there is always a moving target. So this is one area which I need some help in, like how are people doing it, what
So
should be done.
that is a design system concern, though, right? Like, I know you might not have a design system team separately, but we treat it as a design system concern when one particular component or part of it is not working very well, is slow to interact and stuff. That will become a design system priority for in our book, at least. So yeah, finding the owners for all these things is important. Yeah.
Right. So even in the audience,
Ankit,
if
I want to
somebody
add one
has an
thing here.
answer. Yeah, sure. Sorry.
So one thing I want to add over here, like on production, when something goes wrong, when something is janky, how do you fix that? The answer to that is your developers, right? Like your developers need to be empowered towards performance. That's the ultimate goal that we should head for. If your developers are not empowered, things will go for a toss. They'll end up shipping only the features. That's it. Like they won't even care about, okay, my animations are at 60 FPS, is it janky or not? So culture is an important part of it. Developers need to have empathy towards user. They should be empowered towards performance.
When we say empowered, do you mean better tools
That's
or do you
Yes.
mean better processes or both?
Better processes, you should have an alignment with the stakeholder that, okay, even having a small the long load time can affect our business. All of these ecosystems I'm talking about.
So my problem is, let's say I am assuming that there is no fault of engineers. Engineers are super motivated to do this thing, but mostly what happens is the set of data that you work on in your development environment, right, might not be a full production system. You might only get 3 brands while you are testing your system, and in production there can be like 200. So that's the difference. So they would never find out in their test data that there is a problem.
That's
I
where
think I've
real user
spoken too
monitoring
much.
comes into the picture, right? So that's what I'm talking about. If a developer is empowered towards it, he'll actually go and use those tools for their own benefit and
Okay.
ultimately
Right.
company's benefit. Yes.
Yeah, that makes total sense. A bit of process and a lot of tools to get these automated for you. All right, guys, we are on time, and I guess this is where we say uh, goodbye to the viewers. We'll be hanging out for a session for next few minutes. So yeah, keep your questions coming. Thank you.
Bye bye, everybody.